Okay, good evening and welcome again to Corby Connections. And tonight we have a very special guest, Dolly Duffy, uh, Executive Vice President of the University Relations and Executive Director of the Notre Dame Alumni Association. But before we get to Dolly, I'm going to bring back Pat. Pat is our creator of our Corby Connections. So Pat, I'm going to turn it over to you. Pat?
Thanks, Rick. And Dolly, we're so appreciative of your time. We know how busy you are. You head up what is arguably the most extensive and active alumni association in the nation. I mean, there are clubs around the world, literally. So, you're keeping tabs on clubs that are in big American cities, European cities, and of course, the center of the universe, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So you're so busy. We're just so happy to have you with us.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, this is
great.
I
have a pretty special spot in my heart for Gettysburg.
Rick and I were talking before you came on, and I asked him, if you'd been to Gettysburg in the past, because I just started getting active with the club more recently. And he said, sure. Dolly came to Gettysburg with Father Jenkins and with Coach Kelly. And I want you to let both Father Jenkins and Coach Kelly know that we invited you to Corby Connections before we invited them.
Absolutely.
So the Notre Dame Alumni Association. Sorry, go ahead.
I came another time and brought my husband and all 5 of my children. So I've been there 3 times.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Yes.
Thank you.
So by my math, the Notre Dame Alumni Association was founded 152 years and 2 days ago in the office of the then president of the university, Father William Corby, after whom this series of interviews is named. And that, from such humble roots, we now have this sprawling organization of which you are the leader. So, I just thought it was interesting to look back at how they founded the association, and what was important to them then, as their mission is roughly the same mission now, which was to preserve and strengthen the common tie that binds us to each other and alma mater by means of yearly reunions and by literary correspondence. That's reunions and all kinds of correspondence are a theme today, of course, throughout the association.
Very much so. And if you'll note, in that mission statement, and as we call them now, and in the new mission statement, one thing is absent from both of them, and that is the fact that Notre Dame, the Alumni Association, is not a part of development and is not designed to ask people for monetary gifts to the university. And I think that speaks volumes about the mission of Notre Dame, about the way the university perceives the alumni and friends of the university, and the fact that engagement for engagement's sake is very much prized.
And I think it also speaks volumes about the alumni and friends who flock regularly in a volunteer capacity to all of the service projects and all of the events that the clubs have, because they're not going there for any reason other than their love of Notre Dame. Absolutely.
And it shows in the amount of time people give to the clubs, 270 clubs worldwide. And then in turn, not just the leadership of the clubs, but the people that come to the events and do the volunteer work give so much of their time as a way of showing their love of Notre Dame.
And you mentioned just a moment ago, you added the alumni and friends. And I think that that's something that in more recent years has become just part of the tagline of the NDAA, is that, there might be something like 132,000 living alumni at any given time. And maybe that number has changed, but that's what I found online. But it's so much more than that, especially in a club like the Club of Gettysburg, because there are so many people whose love for Notre Dame is no less strong and is sometimes even stronger, even though they did not attend a single class there. And I think that's significant that inclusion of friends in your description.
Well, the Gettysburg Club certainly was instrumental in educating us on the benefit of having friends in both directions. I mean, it's been great. And every time I see them, I credit them with this desire when we just made the change to put a tagline that said alumni and friends. And it's interesting because I'm part of a group of private colleges and universities executive directors, and they all just marvel at the fact that we would embrace Friends of the University like we do. But that's because Friends of the University embrace us as they do. And it's just a great opportunity for all of us. We love the Gettysburg Club. One of my favorite stories was very early on. I don't remember what year it was when Coach Kelly and I came there early in his career, and I wanted him to know just what this club was made of. And so, Rick, I don't know if you remember, Patrick, I don't know if you were there, but we asked, okay, we would like everyone in the room that isn't an alumnus to please stand up. And about 90% of the room stood up. He was floored by it, the passion that's there.
Yes, it was great.
And getting back to the what that mission statement was, it's not only been expanded to have that inclusion of Friends of the University, but also, one thing I noticed was that yearly reunions was mentioned, and that has been such an enormous part of what the Alumni Association does. The pilgrimage that alumni and friends make to the university, and that has to be a bit of a void right now in the lives of everyone at the NDAA, now that we can't really hold reunions. So how is that going?
To my knowledge, this is the first time ever that we've not been able to hold a reunion. So it's hard. It's hard because having everyone come back to the campus energizes us. It's so exciting to attend reunion. I think of us as attending it too, being a part of it every year. So what we've done instead is just are totally channeling ourselves into how are we going to do 2 reunions next year to bring in this group and also next year's. So we're looking at 2 weekends back to back.
That sounds great. And it's, I attended a fairly spirited high school, and there were reunions for an awful long time, but it seemed like social media started to replace that was how people kept in touch. But it's just not the same thing with Notre Dame. Being on the campus, coming from all over the world in different directions to see each other again, just has it takes on just a different level of meaning, I think. To be there, to go to the grotto, to go to Sacred Heart, to see the dorm where you lived. There's just something really special about that.
Interestingly enough, we try to use social media very much so, but it has the opposite effect. We use it to drive people to come back for the reunions. And one of the interesting things is young alumni. I know there's not a lot of young alumni in the Gettysburg Club, but when we look at the 5-year class, for the last 6 straight years, the 5-year class has broken the record of attendance of the class each time before them. And so now we have almost a quarter of that class coming back for their 5-year reunion.
Fantastic. Dolly, I just wanted to give some people who might be listening to or watching this interview some sense of the structure of the Notre Dame Alumni Association, to give them an idea of how you carry this off. How do you pull it off that you have alumni all over the world, and yet you somehow manage to keep that bind with the university and with them? So you have there's a president, there are regional directors, and then there are constituency directors. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So the actual staff is a staff of 39. And everybody is in certain different areas, whether it be in marketing or IT or programs or clubs, and we like to think we hire the best of the best. But no matter how good we are, we couldn't even remotely have the impact that we do without all of our volunteers, and that includes our board structure. So we have the NDAA board that has it's 30 members. And the president-elect, it has regional directors from all over. And in keeping with this alumni and friends theme, when we redid kind of the makeup of the board recently, for the first time in history, we added 1 designated seat for a non-alum. So that we have so many people like Rick all over that have run our clubs for decades, and we didn't ever have them on our board, and it didn't seem right. So we have that, and then we have the various constituencies of young alumni, senior alumni, Native American, Hispanic, Black, Asian Pacific. We have 3 members who come from international, and I'm betting that I'm forgetting something. And ND Women Connect, of course.
I'm so glad you picked up on the constituencies as well, because I mean, to start with, women weren't even admitted to Notre Dame until the 1970s, and I think there's been a fairly long history of a sort of homogeneous population of among the student body, where it's been a lot of white Catholic kids like me from out in the suburbs across the country. But steadily, the university has really demonstrated its commitment to inclusion of racial and ethnic and diversity, as well as to promote women as leaders. And it's just the fact that the board specifically recognizes that is important as well, because it sends the message then out into the whole world.
Absolutely. I think about back when Father Hesburgh opened up the university, not by himself, but he was the greatest proponent of allowing women into Notre Dame. And the first full 4-year class, women graduated before this, but the first 4-year class came in 72 and graduated in 76. And Father Hesburgh had a comment, something like, we can never be a great university if we don't bring in half of our population, meaning women. I would say the same thing about, we need to be reflective. If we're going to be a great university, we need to be reflective of everyone in this country, and not just bringing in a very, very small amount of this group or that group. So we're going to be a better university when we get there.
Agreed. And I'm glad you brought up Father Hesburgh's role in bringing that about. Obviously, with racial tensions flaring up around the country now in 2020, it's good to remember his example when he marched with civil rights leaders back in the day. And I'm glad that Notre Dame continues to recognize his leadership in that regard. And in case nobody has pointed it out to you, your board structure does have some significant contributions from Central Pennsylvania, including the Notre Dame Women Connect. Melinda Bowker is your leader there. She went to Trinity High School, which was my alma mater. And your president-elect is Kevin Buckley, whose parents are 2 of the most wonderful people. And
Ernie and Mary.
They're just fantastic. Ernie and Mary are just the best ambassadors that the University of Notre Dame could hope for.
Yeah.
Well, so I just wanted to point out that the structure of the university's alumni association, and I really think people ought to be encouraged to go to the website and check out what we're talking about. And the website is my.nd.edu, and then they will see everything from products and services, like getting the state license plates. The Alumni Association, talk about buying power when you have such an extensive organization. There are deals to be found with Lenovo computers and insurance, but there's also, you can look up the history of giving to the university, and see what you've given in the past. There's just all kinds of resources on there. And you've done such a commendable job with that.
Thank you, Patrick. And it's going to change dramatically and get even better as we begin migrating all of our clubs over to a new platform. It's just unbelievable, and it will make everything a lot easier. But as we know, the switchover is always just a little bit hard. But I'm telling you, it'll be worth it in the end. So we have that to look forward to. We've just begun that process.
Absolutely. And I think it really took off, all of your hard work really took off when, I think the fight song is playing all of a sudden. I'm not sure where that came from. But it really took off when people during the pandemic were confined to their homes. And all of a sudden there was an uptick of people in front of their screens going to pray at ND or Faith ND, where there are, you can essentially pray at the grotto from Pennsylvania or from wherever you happen to be. And it's just a wonderful way to include people around the world with what's going on campus. And I'd like to think that that goes back to the original mission that those people in Father Corby's office were talking about when they brought up literary correspondence. You've just brought it into the modern age, and I think it's just great.
Patrick, I love the fact that the whole Faith ND and the daily gospel reflection, right? We have over 100,000 people that receive that every single day. So, and a different person that writes a reflection. Have you written one yet?
I have not.
I think we got to get you to write one. I think that would be great.
I accept the challenge.
Great. Send me an email.
I will do that.
So the readership of that is unbelievable. The open rate is amazing, but it also gives us a chance to spin out so many other things. And so when the pandemic hit, we started doing rosaries from the grotto. Unbelievably, Father Jenkins' rosary had over 50,000 views. Which is pretty amazing. Not to mention all of the other ones cumulatively, and the masses and all of that. And I think it tells us just that there is a great opportunity digitally for us to continue to make a difference. And so now we're in the middle of brainstorming all kinds of things that we can do digitally to make sure that we can still connect at a time when this fall, the university is not going to allow us to send any speakers out.
And arguably, this is a time when people need that the most. You know, they need a rosary with Father Jenkins to get them through some tough times. So what a tremendous service. Dolly, I want to be respectful of your time, but we can't let you go without understanding, how did you come to Notre Dame in the first place? Because I know you were with the class of 1984, but what brought you to Notre Dame?
You know, I was just talking about this with my youngest daughter, Flannery, and I was talking about the whole, I'd never set foot on campus before I arrived as a freshman. So I grew up in rural South Dakota, and my 4 grandparents all came from Ireland. And so my grandmother homesteaded as a single woman in Ireland. So we were immensely proud of our Irish heritage because there weren't a lot of us there. And we talked a lot about Notre Dame. And when it came time for me to begin thinking about where I wanted to go, I realized I wanted to go to Notre Dame. And I applied, I got accepted, and I never set foot on campus till I arrived there with all my possessions as a freshman.
Well, your Irish grandmother must have been very proud, because you after Notre Dame, you went on to, as I understand it, served as a press secretary for a U.S. congressman. You worked for a PR firm in St. Louis and Kansas City. Eventually, you grew a major company to $15 million in sales before heading up the Notre Dame Alumni Association, as sprawling as it is. And all of that, of course, pales in comparison to having a wonderful marriage and 5 children. So there's an awful lot for her to be proud of.
Thank you. I often said that there's a subtle message, right? When you graduate, I can only talk about it as a graduate. Maybe that subtle message is for people who grow close to Notre Dame. And it was, go out and make us proud. Do whatever you can. Not necessarily proud as in you have to give $1 million, although that is my thing. Development thinks that's it. But I also think that make us proud by running a Notre Dame. Make us proud by taking care of the elderly as a really great attorney. Make us proud by doing volunteer work. There are all kinds of ways that we can use our God-given talent. But that was the message that I definitely heard of: go forth and be a force for good.
Very well said, and I think that's a good note on which I will pass it back to Rick.
Thank you, Pat. Dolly, on the behalf of the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, again, thank you for taking your time out this evening. And I think I could speak to everybody here at Notre Dame. You've been Gettysburg. You've always been a special friend, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dolly.
Take care. God bless.
Yep.
Go Irish.
Go Irish.